If you grew up in the 70s or early 80s, you might remember this opening sequence quite well. This was my favorite TV show when I was a kid. I had the dream of one day building a model of the Phoenix, and now that I have a 3D printer, I decided to make a diorama of this particular clip. So first off, it was to Thingiverse to find the right model. And then I printed it off. I ended up printing 3 copies of the model, as with resin printing, filling the build plate makes the most sense. This print took a long time, over 5 hours with almost 2,000 layers. Once I had cleaned up and cured the prints, I flattened the back of the Phoenix and the engines with some sandpaper and glued the engines on. It was good to have printed them separately, as both parts could be printed directly on my flexible build plate to avoid needing to use too many supports. However, I may have used not enough supports, as I noticed that I had a few print flaws. It was good that I had printed out more than one model, as I was able to steal one wing pod from another model and glue it on. The wing also had some layer shift lines, which I sanded and then filled in as best as I could with some putty. I needed to mount the Phoenix so it hovers in midair in the final diorama, but also so I can hold it to paint it. I found a suitable black plastic rod, found the balance point, which is just ahead of the vertical takeoff and landing ports, measured to find the right size drill bit, and then used my pin vise to drill a fairly deep hole. I cut a small hole in the side of the rod for wiring. I took some very thin magnet wire and threaded it through this side hole and down the rod to wire up later to some LEDs. And then I glued it in place into the model. The rod is a bit flexible, especially with the weight of the model, but it seems to hold it fine. I also masked off the rod to keep paint off of it since it's already black. And then off to the garage for the base coat of blue. This blue is a craft paint that I carefully diluted and filtered, and it sprayed well in my airbrush. After letting that dry completely, it's time to mask for some silver. I used a combo of Tamiya masking tape and regular painter's tape. silver went on well. However, when I removed the masking tape, I ended up ripping off the pod that I had glued on earlier. So out came the CA glue and I stuck it back on. Now to mask for red. This was very time consuming. The nose required very thinly cut Tamiya masking tape, as the design on the nose curves ever so slightly. It's not perfect, but it will do. Now on to the wiring. I decided I wanted to have the VTOL jets lighted as in the opening sequence. I had some orange LEDs handy. They're a bit big, but will be hidden, as you'll see in a moment. I snipped off the existing wires as they were too thick, soldered the LEDs in series together. I tested these with a 9-volt battery, and it's already looking good. And then soldered them to the magnet wires which I had fed through the rod earlier. But those LEDs need to be hidden, so I took a cotton ball and shaped it into 2 VTOL jet blasts. glued it onto the ports. But the LEDs glow nicely through the cotton. I'll reveal it later at the end, when the diorama is completely done. So that ends part 1. The Phoenix is painted and ready for its diorama. Stay tuned for part 2 of the diorama build.